Hit the record button. So welcome to another ACE training. So the plan for today is to, there we go. The plan for today, like Sarah said, is to go through how to enter that paper data onto the ACE. It's a data entry feature we call summary data entry. So I'm going to go over that today. And then, like our previous trainings, I'm going to be available for the rest of the hour to help support any questions, concerns, comments, problem solving that might be helpful as you guys keep working through getting things set up on the ACE system. Before I get the summary data, I just want to introduce Greg Mastrolangelo. He is going to be taking over as your ACE trainer for Bancroft School. After 12 years, I'm going to be leaving NECC and the ACE department to take up a new position at a different agency. And while I'm very sad to be leaving NECC, to be leaving the ACE department, to be leaving everybody at Bancroft, because I've really enjoyed speaking to everybody over the last few months and getting you guys up and running with using the ACE system. I'm very happy to pass the case off to Greg. As you can see, Greg has a wealth of experience, both at NECC and in the ACE department. He has set up ABA programs overseas. He is a fantastic trainer, and he's going to get you guys even further along in your ACE journey with using the system and benefiting your students. So I'm going to just let Greg introduce himself. He is on the camera right now before we get started.
Hi, everyone. I look forward to working with all of you. Cormac has shared wonderful information about everyone. Thank you for that little bullet point list there, Cormac. So as Cormac said, I've been at New England Center for Children for about 15 years, in the ACE department for about 5, primarily as a trainer. I look forward to, again, just working with everyone. I know you guys are busy today, so I don't want to talk too much about myself. But I look forward to seeing you guys in future trainings and being available for any questions that might come up once Cormac leaves. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Greg. And I'll pass along Greg's contact information to John and Katerina to send it to everybody when I send along the link to this training that we're doing today. Thanks, Greg. I'll see you later in the week.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good training.
All right. So I'm going to switch my screen over to the ACE website. So we're going to log in. And again, if you want to follow along on your device, please feel free to do so. So we're going to go ahead and log in. And the area of the system that we're going to be going to today is back into the curriculum app today. So we're going to click on curriculum. And before I highlight summary data, I want to point out a couple of things that have changed in the system since I last spoke to you. You'll notice in the top right-hand corner, our little student selector has kind of changed. We're trying to make the system a little bit more user-friendly to enhance the user experience based on some feedback that our clients like yourselves, our users like yourselves give us. So what we've done is we have changed that blue graduate icon into a nice big purple button to make it a lot easier for you to find that button, click on that button, open up that student selector like we've done before. So instead of clicking on a button at the top right-hand corner of the screen like we did before, we're going to click on that big purple button, and that's going to open up our student selector like it did before. Okay, just to make it a little bit easier to find that that mechanism of switching between students. Now, like previous trainings, I'd recommend switching over to the practice classroom. If you have some actual data that you want to enter for your Bancroft students, by all means, please do that. That would be wonderful. But if you want to practice this portion with a practice students, by all means, please switch over to your practice student. To refresh ourselves, to switch over to a practice student, we're going to click the top drop down in our student selector. You can see the 3 accounts that I have access to right now. We're going to switch over to ACE practice. Okay, and that will lead us to the practice students. Okay, again, to close down that student selector, if we're not switching, I'm switching between students, we're just going to click on that big new student selector button right here. Going to scroll further down the screen. We're on the curriculum dashboard page. There's a couple of ways for us to get to summary data entry. You can see we have a quick link right at the top of the screen that will take us to summary data. We also have another way to get the summary data down below. You'll see an enter data widget right here. Okay, in the enter data widget, you'll see a drop down for active lessons. Now, the active lessons that will be listed here will be the lessons that are active for the student you currently have up on the screen. So I'm working on my training student again, Cormac Jr. Here are the lessons, here are the skills, Here are the goals that I have set up for him already that are currently active. Okay. Now, the first type of lesson that we're going to go to today to enter data for will be one of our essay lessons, one of our discrete trial lessons. Okay. So I'm going to scroll down to a lesson that I have set up for Cormac Jr., which is match identical objects. Okay. It's an essay or discrete trial lesson. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. Sorry, folks, just want to check the chat. Oh, I just got a message that you're not able to see the right portion of the screen. Let me change my share. Let me reshare. Make sure you can see okay. Can everyone see the full screen now? My mouse cursor is currently on the right-hand side of the screen. Everyone see that? Now I'm moving over to the left. Ashley, I see you nodding for me. Thank you. I appreciate it. Did everyone see how I switched between students, the new student selector?
Cormac, can you show us again, how did you get to Cormac Jr., please?
Sure, of course. So I'm in the curriculum app. Okay, I got to the curriculum app via the app library. This is the curriculum dashboard. What I was highlighting at the start of the training, my apologies if you guys couldn't see it, is the new student selector button. So instead of the blue graduate icon button with the text beside it, we now have this big purple one, and only this big purple button right here in the top right-hand corner of the screen. I'm going to zoom in so you guys can see it nice and clear. Okay, so you see that big, huge purple button in the top right-hand corner of the screen. Okay, that's how we're going to be navigating between students now. That's how we're going to pull up that student selector that appears on the right-hand side of the screen. So if I click on Cormac's name here, you see that black bar appear on the right-hand side of the screen. Does everyone see that okay? See any thumbs up? I have one camera on, so I think Christina's camera, Christina's feed. If you can give me a thumbs up, you can see that. Or anyone in the background. David, thank you very much. Perfect. Okay, so that's how I'm going to switch between my students as before. Okay. Again, recommend switching over to a practice student. If you want to enter data for your actual caseload of students, by all means, please do that. Okay. To get the summary data, which is the topic we're going to be covering today, there's a couple of ways we can get here. Summary data at the top of the screen, you'll see it listed along the quick links in the curriculum app. So that's one way to get the summary data entry. Another way is to scroll down to the bottom of the curriculum dashboard, which is the page we're currently on, and you'll see an enter data widget right here. Now, under the enter data widget, you'll see a drop down for active lessons. Okay, lessons that we've set up, that we've activated for this student, goals that we've activated for this student. The first type of lesson that I'm going to be selecting the enter data for will be a discrete trial lesson, one of our essay or skill acquisition lessons. Okay, so I've selected match identical objects, and then I'm going to click data entry. Okay, right here. When I click data entry, the page is going to reload. It's going to take me to the summary data entry page, which is going to look like this. Okay, does everyone see the summary data entry page? So for summary data entry, we are entering some data. Okay, the first thing we want to do, we want to double check. We want to make sure we're on the right lesson. There's nothing worse than having a big stack of paper pencil data sheets, entering all that data and realizing that you entered data for the wrong lesson, for the wrong goal. Okay, so we want to make sure we're on the right lesson. So you'll see lesson information at the top of the screen. If we're on the wrong lesson, no biggie, we have our next lesson widget right beside it. Okay, so again, we have that drop down where we can select the lessons that are currently active for this student. Okay, select one of those lessons and click go, or we can cycle through the lessons one by one by clicking go to next lesson. When we're cycling through lessons via go to next lesson, we're going through lessons via objective number. Okay, so that's where the objective number could be useful, okay, to help organize all the goals, all the lessons you have set up for your student. Okay, I'm on the right lesson right now. Let's pretend I have a big stack of paper pencil data sheets. I want to enter some data for match identical objects, which is objective number 1.1 for my friend Cormac Jr. Okay, if I scroll further down the page, you'll see a data entry widget. Okay. So what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be taking the information from our paper pencil data sheet. In our last couple of trainings, we kind of saw how we are recording, how our direct care staff are going to be recording those data, the information that they're going to be writing in on those data blocks. Now we're transferring that information into this screen. Okay, so I want to make sure that I am inputting the correct date that a teaching session was implemented. Let's pretend that there was a teaching session implemented at the start of the week. Okay, let's say Monday the 16th. You see that we have the nice little calendar for you to click on, okay, to select the appropriate date. So August 16th right there. Under setting, we have a drop down. These are different codes on the system, okay? You guys are gonna have to determine what you want these codes to mean, okay? These are codes that the ACE will read to help figure out when mastery criteria has been met. Remember, mastery criteria is made up of a number of different things. The number of teachers that the student is performing the skill with, the number of settings, and the performance criteria, and the number of consecutive sessions we want to see the student perform at that specific criteria. Okay, so if you are teaching across multiple settings, you probably want to be selecting different settings here when you're entering your data. So school one, what typically happens? School one might be the student's home desk, right? Their typical desk, their typical seating assignment in the classroom. Maybe their specific cubby area that they have in the classroom. Okay. School two might be a different location in the classroom, a different desk, maybe the common table in the middle of the classroom, maybe a classroom across the hallway. Maybe the second setting is the school library or the cafeteria or the playground or whatever. Okay. I'm going to enter some data here for school one. So I'm going to select school one. We're going to type in the teacher initials. So the person who ran this teaching session, I'm going to pretend that I ran this teaching session. I'm going to type in my initials. If the lesson has more than one level, we want to make sure that we have the right level selected. This particular lesson, my match identical objects lesson, only has one level. So I only have one level appearing in my dropdown. And then I want to enter data for a specific sublevels. Remember, sublevels are our sets of targets. Okay, so I'm going to enter some data for sublevel 1.01. Okay, I'm going to select it right there, 1.01, which is banana, apple, and orange. Okay. And then from here, under trial type, I'm going to select the appropriate type of session that I am entering data for. Okay, so for this particular sublevel, I'm going to enter some baseline data. Okay, and the reason why I'm going to enter some baseline data is because we're going to pretend, I just scroll down the page, we're going to pretend that we introduced these targets with Cormac Jr. on Monday. Okay, and you can see there's no data points on the graph just yet. There's no data entered for sublevel 1.01. So it makes sense that I'm entering some baseline data here. Okay. You'll notice that when I select the baseline trial type, the prescribed prompt will default to NA. The reason why it's going to default to NA is because we're not prompting in baseline. Okay. We're assessing the student. You're trying to determine whether or not the student can perform the skill, match identical objects with these particular objects. Okay. Banana, apple, and orange. Okay. And then from here, we're going to be looking at our 9 trial data block. We're going to be counting up the number of responses that were correct, the number of times a student was correct with a prompt, which in this case should be 0, and the number of times a student was incorrect or incorrect with a prompt. Okay, so let's pretend my student engaged in 1 correct response of the 9 trials in this pretend baseline session from earlier in the week. All I'm going to do is either type in 1 or use the little arrows. I'm going to just type it in. So 1 correct response, and he engaged in 8 incorrect responses. Okay, and that's all I have to do. That's my data entered. Okay, you'll notice over on the right hand side in this little blue box, the ACE has tallied the number of data points that I've just entered. So in this case, 9, 1 plus 8 equals 9, and it has calculated the percent of those 9 trials, those teaching opportunities in which the student responded correctly and independently. So 1 out of 9 is giving us 11%. Okay. And then from here, I can do 2 things. I can hit the save button or I could click add row. Now they both do the same thing. They're both going to save our data. Clicking save just kind of clears this this data entry box, right? Kind of clears all the things that I just typed in there. And advances you to the next day in the calendar. Okay, add row saves the data but keeps you on the same day. They both do the same thing. Okay, you may click add row if you are entering more than one teaching session for the same day, which is what I'm going to do right now. Let's pretend. So I'm going to click add row. When I click add row, you can see that everything's kind of cleared. The date has kind of stayed on 8/16. Okay. And if I scroll down now to the bottom of the screen at the past data grid, you can see that I now have a graph. Okay. I have a graph of that one data point, that one teaching session that I just entered data for. Okay. And there it is. Okay. Data point for 8/16. You can see that I am looking at level 1, I'm sublevel 1.01. I can toggle between the other sublevels if I needed to. Okay, but we're going to stick on 1.01. We have our session data graph. We also have a past data grid. Okay, so if I click on past data grid, we're basically just going to have those same data, but in a table format. Okay, so there you can see the same information that I just entered up above a few seconds ago. So the date, column for the date of the teaching session, the setting in which it was implemented, the teacher, the trial type, the targets, what prompt was used, if any. This case, for our baseline session, there was no prompt. And then the student's performance, the status of these targets. These targets are in progress now. The student has not yet met mastery criteria. Okay, that status bar will be different once they meet mastery criteria. And then the last column in this past data grid is an action column. Okay, you see there's 2 buttons here. The blue button enables me to edit this result. If I see, oh, you know what, this session was not actually implemented on 8/16, it was implemented on 8/17, or it wasn't me who implemented this teaching session, it was actually Greg, so I need to change these initials, okay? That's how you can edit the result. If I find that I entered data for the wrong lesson, or we later discover that this baseline session was implemented completely incorrectly and these data are not useful, I can delete the data by clicking on the red trash can. Okay, so that's how we're entering some teaching session data for an essay lesson. Okay, I'm going to scroll back up. We're going to add another data point for this lesson. I want to add a teaching session this time. Okay, so again, I want to make sure the date's correct, the setting's correct. I'm going to type in some teacher initials. Let's pretend Greg ran the next teaching session, the first teaching session with this particular set of targets. Okay, so we're staying on 1.01. We're going to change the trial type this time to training, and the prescribed prompt changes to prompting step 0 immediate prompt. Now in the drop down, I can change this. Okay, if I'm entering data for not prompting step 0, for prompting step 1 or 2 or 3, I can change that. We're going to enter some data for prompting step 0. And then for this teaching session, I'm going to pretend that our prompt is effective. It helped facilitate correct responses, so the student performed 9 out of 9 of those teaching trials correctly with that prompt. Again, the ES has totaled those opportunities over here, and it's worked out the percent correct independence, which in this case went down to 0, which makes sense because I prompted every correct response. That's why it's at 0. Okay. This time I'm going to hit the save button. You can see the form clears and the ES has advanced us to the next day in the calendar. Okay. If I scroll down and look at our past data grid, our past data grid now has 2 rows of data, 2 rows of information. Okay. And we can also see we have 2 data points now on our session data graph. Okay. The light blue circles indicate the percent of trials that were correct. The dark blue diamonds indicate the percent of trials that were correct and independent. So in that first teaching session, student was 100% correct, 0 independence thus far. We'd like to see that dark blue line increase at some point, get up to where the light blue line is, and hopefully be up around that 100% mark. Okay, I'm going to add one more data point. Pretend we faded the prompt. We talked about that in one of our previous trainings. Okay, we're going to do prompting step 1. And then this is where we might have a mixture of responses. So we're going to say 4 responses that were correct, 3 that were correct with a prompt, 1 incorrect response, and 1 incorrect response with a prompt. Okay, again, totaled that up for us. 9 trials total. Okay, 4 plus 3 plus 1 plus 1 equals 9. And because the student responded correctly and independently in 4 of those trials, we get a percent correct independence score of 44%. Okay, for this particular teaching session. Again, if I hit the save button, we scroll down, you can see we have another data point on the graph. Okay, if I go to the past data grid, you can see that based on the information that I typed in there, the student responded correctly in 78% of opportunities. Okay, 7 out of 9 trials. 44% of those 9 trials, student responded correctly and independent. Okay. Again, if any of these results need to be edited for whatever reason, we have the edit button over here. We have the red trash can to delete any of these entries. Does anyone have any questions on how to enter data for an essay lesson? Okay, I'm going to scroll back up to the top, which I just did. I'm going to switch now over to a TA lesson. I'm going to learn how to enter data for a TA lesson. Okay, so I'm going to switch over to a TA lesson for Cormac Junior. I have this puzzle TA lesson. It's a forward chain. So I just selected it. I'm going to click the go button. Page is going to reload. We're still on summary data, but the lesson info at the top of the screen is now telling me that I am on lesson objective number 23, lesson name puzzle. Okay. Yeah, we always want to make sure we're on the right lesson. We're at the data for the right lesson. Okay. Data entry form. Some of it looks similar. Some of it is a little bit different. Okay. Again, we're going to select the right date that we want to enter data for. Pretend that I have a bunch of data that I have not popped in a while. School setting. Teacher initials as before. Chain in the dropdown, there might be more than one chain. In your task analysis lessons, you can add multiple chains. Okay, so this is a puzzle lesson. I might add more puzzles to this lesson over time. Right now, I only have one chain in the dropdown. The chain type will be preset for whatever way you set up this lesson. Okay, so I've set this lesson, this puzzle lesson for Cormac Junior as a forward chaining sequence. I'm teaching it in a forward chain. Okay, so that's why it says forward there. We're on trial type training, 1 trial per session. And for this particular data point that I'm entering, we're going to pretend that we were on teaching step 7 in the chain. Okay. If I click on the drop down, you can see that there are 12 steps total in this particular behavior chain that I'm teaching for this particular skill. Okay. And then from here, I'm entering the data entry is a little bit different from essay. The data that I'm entering is the prompt that was prescribed for this teaching session. So for this session, we're going to pretend we were at the full physical prompt. Data on how the student performed at the teaching step. So with my full physical guidance, the student, Cormac Junior, was able to complete step 7 in the chain. So I'm going to select correct with prompt. And then the ACE will automatically calculate the number of independent steps, which in this case is going to be 6. Now that 6 comes from the fact that I'm on teaching step 7, which means that he should be able to perform the first 6 steps in that chain by himself. Okay. If he did not, if he made an error on one of those steps, that's where this last column comes in. If he made an error on, let's say, step 3, I'm going to select step 3 to note that he made an error on step 3 in this particular teaching session. Okay. You'll notice that when I clicked step 3, the number of independent steps dropped from 6 to 5. Okay. He now completed 5 steps independently and correctly. Okay. I'm going to deselect 3. Okay. We're going to pretend that everything was flawless. And then I'm going to hit save. Data successfully saved on the screen. If I scroll down, let's look at the session data graph first. The session data graph for a TA lesson is a bar graph. Okay, the bars indicate the number of steps independent across each teaching session. Okay, so there's the last data point that I just entered. The student on 5-6 performed 6 of the steps independently and correctly. Okay, I can toggle over the past data grid, and again, I'm seeing the information that I just typed in there. In this row. Okay, so there's my session on 5-6. We were on teaching step 7. We were at the full physical prompt. The student performed correctly with that prompt. 6 of the steps were performed independently. If he made an error on any of the previously mastered steps, like step 3 that I selected but then deselected, that would appear in this column. The status of these target or of this chain is still in progress. Okay. Any questions on entering data for a TA lesson? So in review, to get to your summary data entry page, you start off from the app library. When we log into the ACE, we're going to go to the curriculum app right here. We're then going to make sure that we're on the right student, okay, by using the new student selector. To get the summary data, we can either scroll down to the bottom of this page like I did the first time and select the appropriate lesson, or we could click on one of the quick links up here. You can see summary data right here, click on that, and that's going to take us to the summary data entry page. Want to make sure that we're on the right lesson, okay? So we're going to check the lesson info, and if we're not in the right lesson, we're going to use that next lesson drop down to select the lesson that we need to get to. Those are the main things I had for today to cover with everyone, how to enter that paper pencil data into the system. So I guess for the rest of the hour, you guys are going to be working on activating your lessons, asking me any questions that you might have. I'm just going to jump over to the chat because I did have a question from Rachel. So Rachel, you typed in a very specific objective statement that I'm sure you've written for one of your students. Is the question you have finding a lesson plan to fit that goal? Oh, and sorry, I missed your next message. Looking for lessons that match the two objectives above, if you could assist. Okay, so the first one, identifying a series of desirable outcomes from vocational or technical program independently, but the time is measured by weekly data collection. Rachel, have you tried looking through searching via scope and sequence and going through the vocational section of the ACE curriculum?
Yes, I did look through. I wasn't able to find anything.
Okay. And for your student here, for the objective statement that you wrote, so when you say vocational or technical program, do you mean like a task or skill in like the vocational hour? Is that what that means?
No, I think they want the student to go to college after he graduates from here. And he has
Okay.
to make a plan for that.
Okay. So with the plan
The student
entail,
is not able to make a sentence of more than 3 words, but he still has to plan for what he wants to do for college.
gotcha. So I'm wondering if,
Yeah. Mhm. It has to be realistic though, so it can't be an astronaut. So, right, I thought I was listening through yours.
Yes, this one was still on. So
Right, I'm not muted right now. I'm listening for the answer.
Oh,
yes, you're not muted. Neither am I. So let's. I'm going to try to see if I can find something for you. I just typed in for the keyword. I typed in plan because it's like it sounds like the specific, like the skill, if we break it down as like a planning skill. Like the student's
Mhm.
going to like kind of plan this like future event.
Right. Okay, yeah.
So I'm wondering if it would be. I know this sounds kind of weird, but like plan a trip or outing and then changing the name of the lesson. Or.
Okay.
So that is as an SA lesson or the plan the activity TA. What specific skills, what specific responses does your student need to engage in to kind of meet the goal? Is it a case of like researching programs like on the internet and then like filling out a application form and then sending that application form via email?
I don't think that he's capable of
Okay.
doing all of that. Like I said, he can't write or sequence more than 3 words in a sentence. But mom does want him to get a driver's license and go to college after he leaves here.
Okay.
So just mom wants us to have a goal to help him plan for that. And that was the goal that the last teacher came up.
Yeah, I think this is I think this is a case of like a goal is not really meeting, and I think you kind of described it yourself a few times that the is not really meeting the student's kind of skill set. It's kind of really
Mhm.
above and beyond his skill level,
Mhm.
and that's where I might be considering there's not going to be like one lesson in here that's going to take the student from where he is right now and put him in college, right?
Mhm.
So what it might be, and that's why I was kind of saying like, well, what is like, let's kind of think about what this means. Is this a student who is like getting towards the end of their career in school, or a student who's very young?
He has 3 years left.
Okay. So I'm almost thinking that this like, because I don't know how he's going to meet this goal based on how you've generally described the student's
Mhm.
skill level. I might be thinking of, like I said, some sort of like planning or researching lesson plan. This seems like a type of objective where you might have more than one lesson plan to address different parts of this overacting like goal, right? Because it's not just like it's one thing. There's like multiple components to meeting this goal,
Mhm.
right? And let's kind of like put your student skill set over to the side for a second. If this was a student who maybe you thought it was realistic for him or her to apply for college,
Mhm.
you're probably looking at, all right, I need to teach Sally how to identify what her interests are. I need to help her identify or research what programs fit those interests, or what colleges would offer those types of degrees or classes or courses, and then how to fill out like the application form for that particular college, right?
Okay.
That's almost what I'm thinking for that. With
Mhm.
your learner, I mean, I don't think it's going to be an attainable objective, probably the way mom's envisioning it,
Mhm.
probably. But if you are, you're obviously mandated like, hey, we're going to work on this in some form or fashion. That's where I might be thinking of, all right, I'm going to maybe work on some basic skills that are related to what the student would need to do to get there, or need to do to apply for a vocational or technical program. I mean, the other thing as well, like it being a vocational technical program, it might be like I'm going to like just look at a bunch of vocational skills, like very individualized vocational skills, like filing or mail delivery, or things like that.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know how helpful that was. I'm sorry. It's a very broad goal, and again, based on how you describe the student skill set, it doesn't seem like it may not be an attainable goal for that particular learner.
I agree. All right, thank you.
The other one that you had, will develop a realistic plan for accessing post-secondary educational training options. Again, I think that would be kind of like a plan, like teaching him to kind of like plan an activity, or like learning how to do some like researching, which might, we might have to go like very, very basic, and like I'm going to teach him how to like open up like Google. And there are certainly lesson plans related to like internet and computer skills.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
But it is a really nice example of like, hey, here's a bigger goal. There might be multiple skills that we're going to work on for this one goal. So
Right.
I appreciate you bringing that up for everybody.
Okay. Thank you.
Good. Are there any other questions that I can answer for folks? Again, feel free to type them in the chat, or feel free to turn your mic on. I'll be happy to walk through potential answers, hopefully.